All right, good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Indian Cree, and Dakota peoples, and is the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me via Zoom are Michelle Duncan and Diane Knight. The assessor today is Matthew Baracus, and the administrative personnel is Nicole Carnegie. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues in a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal information, I'll do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application be brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recording will be part of the record. We'll be hearing items 1 through 4 on the docket today. Ms. Carnegie, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Matthew Baracus.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Carol Primer.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
All right, the first property on the agenda today is 319 Elgin, and it's for the 2022 assessment year. And the issues are classification, liability, and amount. So Mr. Brackus, can you lead us through the basic information, and then we will go to Mr. Reimer for the class and liability.
Okay. So just the first page then?
Yeah, just the first page, yeah.
Okay. File 23-27, roll number 130990719100319. Elgin, owner is Red River College. It's 319 Elgin is part of the Exchange District campus of Red River Polytech. Roll year for this brief here is 2022, April 1st, 2018 reference date. We've got an assessed value of $24,024,000. You see the property description on the second half here. We've got a larger, newer built section from 2019, and we've got an older section that has an effective year of 1958, which composes the minority of the square footage. You can see there's multiple square footages, and the plan area is given as well. I'll just pause right there.
Okay, now Mr. Reimer on classification and liability.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if I might ask the board members and Mr. Baracus to turn briefly to our page. That'll be page 17 of our materials. So I'll give the board context, and I'd ask that the comments be carried forward to the 2023 supplementary appeal as well. The circumstances are identical. So the college has filed applications with the Court of King's Bench concerning the properties contained within its portfolio relating to the issue of school tax exemptions. At this time, those applications are still pending, and our simple request is to, for the purposes of this hearing, to have the liability and classification confirmed with the expectation that applications with respect to these two supplementary assessments would also be filed and joined with the pre-existing applications in court. The crux of the issue, Mr. Chairman, just to set the context for it, the assessment department and Altus differ on their interpretation of the legislative structure. The college is initially fully exempt under Section 22 of the Municipal Assessment Act. Then, though grantable under the provisions of the Municipal Act, its starts at sections 334 of the Municipal Act. The difference in opinion comes through in the interpretation of the amount of grant to be payable under the Municipal Act. And our position remains that given the wording in the Municipal Act, which talks about grants payable as if the college were not exempt from municipal taxation, we interpret that to mean that the amount of grant payable is without reference to Section 22, which is the full exemption other than for local improvements. But our position very much remains you can't stop there, and you have to look at what other provisions within the Municipal Assessment Act might apply. And of course, under Section 23, there is a provision for a school tax exemption for college properties and college, small C college properties, college not being defined in that section. So that's the crux of the issue. The matter will ultimately need to be decided by King's Bench with reference to the applications that have already been filed with these applications to join them. And therefore, I just request confirmation on classification and liability with the expectation of the court's decision being determinative in this case. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on that, Mr. Brockus?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Michelle, any questions? Are you muted, Michelle? I think you're muted, Michelle.
I think she's trying to work on it.
Okay, well then,
Yeah,
Diane.
there we go. Sorry
Oh.
about that. I don't know what's going on, but no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, any questions then?
No, sir.
Okay, noting that the confirmation was requested, Mr. Brockus, can you lead us through Cole's notes version of the city's position on class and liability for the record?
Oh, well, you know what? Understand. Carrie and I talked ahead of it. Carrie and I talked ahead of time about this. I was expecting a confirmation request. It's basically what he said in regards to our disagreement in regards to how the school tax exemption would apply to a grantable property. It's being heard at a higher level, so that this will be rolled into whatever comes out of that decision. So I'm not changing the city's position.
Okay, thank you for that. Michelle or Diane, any questions on the city's position?
No, sir.
Michelle?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, and last night I read the city's brief in detail, and I was hopefully expecting a real good discussion on this matter, and then I read Mr. Reimer's brief that kind of disappointed me.
Oh,
So anyhow, thank you for that. Now, Mr. Brockus on the quantum then.
okay, thank you. So if we can fast forward through my brief here to page 17. It's beginning with the photos of the subject property. So this is the aerial you can see that it's just west of Princess on Elgin. You can see from the photograph on the bottom of page 17, the 3D of the building. So about, probably say more than 3/4 is this newer constructed section. You can see that it has a glass portion slanted here on the ceiling. However, it is to know that the older attached building there, you can see it's got 3 rows of windows, 4 rows wide. That's also part of the Red River College. That's an older building. It's originally from 1914, but it's got an effective age of 1958 on it. You can see on page 18, there's a shot from the ground. I went and did an inspection on this place. I basically went and walked around and took some pictures, just trying to understand what's going on, just to see the physical layout of the place. This skywalk was constructed, attaching the 319 Elgin building to the 160 Princess campus. So they basically operate as one unit. The skywalk serves as an indoor connection for the students to go back and forth between the buildings for their courses, go to their lockers, go to the labs, etc. So just flipping through the pictures, see on the inside at the bottom of page 19, that's right when you come in the door there. So you can see as you go up the stairs, there's like, basically it's like booths where there are tables where students can study or sit or have lunch, kind of like if you've been to the Millennium Library, they have those pods as you go up the stairs. This is basically the same thing. Flipping through, you can see at the top of page 20, that picture there, there's a rounded area. I believe that's it's have a section there called the Roundhouse Auditorium. Now it was locked when I tried to open the door, so I don't have any pictures from the inside. I assume that it's an auditorium type area. Then I turned around, took some pictures. You can see there's multiple levels to this building. There's 5. So it's open air concept here. If you go to page 21 with me, actually, pardon me, the Roundhouse Auditorium is actually on the 2nd floor here. That's what that kind of brown rounded area is. So it's not on the 1st floor. I believe that would be an office administrative space. So along the sides, along the perimeter of these floors, it's basically there's like classroom areas, and they also have kind of mini study pods. You can see the parts that poke out here, the little rectangles that poke out, black windows framed in wood. Those are like mini study areas that can be booked by the students, where they can go in there and have quiet time and studying. And then there's classrooms on the side as well. Also, on the upper floors, once you get to floors 3 and 4, what you see a lot of on the side is lockers. I didn't include those pictures because a big part of this discussion we're having today is the method in which this building is being assessed. We're using it as a cost approach on the building, given that it's unique and purpose-built by Red River College to serve Red River College. I didn't anticipate that it would be valued by the income approach like the applicant. So if so, I would have had probably better pictures, but still, I've been there, been to all the floors. So there's lockers along the outside. And when you get to the end, kind of like above one floor up from where the auditorium is on the second floor, it's basically like a big pod of lockers that you can walk in between. So it's where students go, they put their stuff. It's like school. Classrooms on the side. On the website, it says they have 18 classrooms and 5 labs. I'm not sure what they mean by labs, but that's what I wasn't able to get into the classrooms because it's either really locked or there were students in them with classes going on, so I wasn't gonna barge in. So, but that's what they say, 18 classrooms, 5 labs at River College. Page 21. You can see the bridge, the skywalk. So this connects directly to the Red River College campus at 160 Princess. So they can go, they're free to go back and forth. Maybe they got some classes in this building. Maybe they got some in the old building. Also, see if I can phone quick because in the basement, there's a tiny little kitchenette as well. And there's also some study areas that students are able to go down and sit and study as well at tables, do their work, whatnot. So basically it's our contention, just as we assess 116 Princess, just as the Red River College campus is assessed down in Notre Dame, that this building physically was constructed in a purpose-built nature as a college. So we feel that the cost approach is most applicable. Even that it's not suited primarily as like an office use or a retail use or an industrial use or an apartment. Its most probable use is what it was built for, is a college to serve as an extension of the 160 Princess campus, which you can clearly see on page 18 with the skywalk. So it's getting a bit into the figures here. So it was done on the cost approach. Basically, Marshall and Swift in our system typing in the characteristics of the building, and then it came out with a number in that regard. We also have some, and you have to add land value as well. So let's go to page 23, and you can see the calculation. So there's a little bit of depreciation. It's a newer building. However, there is an older section as well that is under the cost approach. And then we've got then you add the small amount of land value, 522, 122,000, because that's how the cost approach is done, depreciated cost. And then you add the land value on top. So we got the permit on page 25. Found this quite interesting. So the declared construction value was, so I'll make sure we count the zeros right, $60 million on this, which is quite a bit higher than what we have it assessed for. I didn't really put too much weight on this, but it is pretty interesting. I didn't have a breakdown or anything, but you can see it was owners Red River College, construct a 5-story, 7520 square meter addition to the existing commercial building, and then some alterations to the older, smaller building on the side. They're connected, and they essentially operate as one unit. from what I saw when I walked through. And then we have the walkway. On the next page, page 26. Pedestrian bridge linking the one Red River College building to another. 1.3 million on that one. Got some land sale comparables. These are just the comparables that were in the this property was appealed last time when it was just land. These are the properties that were used as comparable, so I just simply took them and cut and paste them. So they range from 83, 51 to 325. There's a couple properties around 145, 142. Sale price per square foot. Let's see where we're at in terms of evaluation. Pardon me. On assessment per square foot. Sorry, I'm just trying to find this here. So we're only at $18 per square foot on this one. So we're a lot lower than the comparables. That's on page 28. So then you have the cost report that follows on page 30. And it just outlines the figures that were spit out. The pedestrian skywalk wasn't given a value. I'm not sure why, but it was overridden to 0, so that's not part of the overall calculation. So to sum it up, basically, it's college. 160 Princess is done on the cost approach. Red River College. Notre Dame is done by the cost approach. So you can see by the pictures of the interior beginning on page 9, it was, purpose built to be a college by a college. That's its highest and best use, not an office building or anything like that. So it's not an income producing property. So we use the cost approach on it. Overall assessment for this roll year, 24,024,000. That's my evidence. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Reimer, questions?
Just a couple, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brokus, just to the department then didn't consider the income approach whatsoever, correct? If I heard you right, it's you've relied on the cost approach in this.
That's
case.
correct. Yeah.
Okay. So if we go to your page and just so we're on the cost breakdown that we're clear, page 30. This is that original building, the 1914 building located at the east end of this site. And this is the cost report relating strictly to that building, correct?
That would be correct. Yes.
Okay. And then for the new development, then going to page 32, that is the Marshall and Swift costing for just the new addition of, and call it roughly just under 81,000 feet, correct?
Sorry, say that last part again with the 81.
On page 32, this is the cost using the Marshall and Swift costing for the new building. It's when I look at the area right at the top, it says 80,945, and that's the area for the new structure, correct?
That is correct.
And then the coding under the cost approach, just looking at the very left hand of that row, this is the coding for college, as opposed to the first building I recall was coded as an office, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of this hearing, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, any questions of the assessor?
So why is the other one classified as an office building by the city then?
Well, I mean, it was originally an office building. It was that section, that smaller section was built as an office building, so that's the way it was entered, so its physical can be captured appropriately by Marshall and Swift.
Okay. And then just so I'm clear on the square footage between the older construction and the new, how much square footage is with the older construction?
So here on the page 30, so we've got the office building, 18978. Then it says we've got a small apartment section finished in the basement. I believe this is where they have the little kitchenette that I mentioned. I went back there on Friday and checked it out. They've got basically a kitchenette, and then you can kind of around the sides of the kitchenette, there's tables where you can sit. It's basically a place for them to, there's a sink, there's cabinets, they can warm up their food, there's microwaves. That would be this area. It's renovated, but it is in that second, it's in the basement, the lower level of the older building. And then I suppose here, 3,851, that would also be that other, the older building in the basement, some finished area in there.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. I was getting the two sections confused. Is there any pictures of the older construction? I noticed like all the pictures were reflective of the newer area. Do you have any of the older area?
No, I don't. I can tell you about it because I went back there actually on Friday and did a better inspection just because I saw there was a difference in valuation methodology, so I did want to get a better idea. I know I was able to get into the basement of the older section, and so it's, you can see the exterior. I think it's like it's originally a 1914 building. Like it's quite old, and they completely renovated it. So again, like I said, kitchenette in the basement, and an area, like concrete floor, and then tables around it where students can study. When I peeked through the window, because the door was left, looked like they had like a class going on the main floor of the older area, and the interior was renovated. Like it looked like a newer building on the inside, but physically the structure of the building is from 1914. That's why it's got such a high effective year built on it. So it was renovated to function as part of the school. So I don't know as much about the older section because I wasn't able to get into anywhere but the basement. So that's all I can tell you. In regards to like the second and third floor of the older building, I don't know. So I wasn't up there.
Okay, and then you mentioned so 1914, but it was renovated. Is that what the 1958 effective year is then? Was it renovated in 1958 or was it renovated since then?
Well, it wasn't
the old building.
Yeah, like it wasn't renovated in 58. Like it's built in 1914, and then it was given an effective age of 1958. It's not completely new. If we gave it like an effective age of 2019, it would be like, oh, then we'd be ignoring the fact that the exterior of the building is still 1914 or the framing, but it was an extensive renovation, like in terms of like HVAC and interior finishes. So to strike a balance, the effective year built to give it extended life because of the renovations, and so it properly depreciates, taking into consider its older structural framing, kind of a middle ground was determined by our department.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Diane, questions?
In regards to the permits, so you're saying that first permit was for $60 million, is that correct?
Yes, unless I counted the zeros wrong.
Yeah, I kind of went back and looked too. I kind of think you're saying 60 million is right. So is there anything on that permit that wasn't completed to get because the value is so different?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that value is. So that's what was declared. I don't know why it's that high. I mean, I know it, like, if you look at the pictures, it's a pretty nice building. However, I don't know anything more about the 60 million.
Okay, and then the 1.3 you said was for the walkway, but the walkway is not part of this?
Yeah, we didn't call it, it wasn't included, it was overridden to zero. I wasn't part of putting this one on. And unfortunately, my supervisor isn't here to ask because he's been away for a few weeks.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer for that.
And then just a further question, where the two buildings, so one's declared office building, one's declared apartment, and then the other one is declared college. No matter what they're declared, doesn't make a difference in the calculation under the method that you call, because they're looking at masonry bearing walls as opposed to steel structure or whatever it is, right? The fireproof steel frame structure. The classification is just a classification. It has nothing to do in the calculation, correct?
For the overall cost approach, I would think that the classification and the physical structure, I mean, what the occupancy status is wouldn't matter as much because
Correct.
it's
Okay.
appreciated
Okay.
anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
So I believe that to be true.
Okay.
All right, and I have no questions that haven't been asked and answered. So Mr. Reimer on the value.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So to set the stage to set the stage for the discussion, Ms. Knight's questions, and it was the same question I had. When one looks at the permit value, and technically, of course, the permit value would be post-reference information with respect to this appeal, but I don't make any bones about it because it's certainly something that for the 2023 assessment appeal would be entirely acceptable as not post-reference evidence. So I just like to talk about it at the front end. The $60 million permit, of course, is for everything that was done, including the renovations and such. But to get to Miss Knight's question, what it demonstrates in our respectful submission is the very, very substantial gap between a very specific, in this case, Red River College, for a very specific educational purpose, making the decision based, of course, on funding from the province to to construct this innovation center for their specific initiatives in the education field. What you'll see in our submission is we've applied the market approach, the income approach to this property, and it results in a substantially different value, of course. But that gets to the very point where the decision to construct this facility and the decision as to all the different components that went into it in the design is not based at all on market considerations, but rather based on very, very specific educational objectives of the college as a public institution. Quite frankly, that gap is, and I'm making no bones about it, that gap is very substantial. The question, of course, had also been posed, well, when you're classifying the property for the purposes of running the cost approach, does it make any difference when you code it as a college versus an office? Well, actually, I believe it does have some bearing on the cost approach. But at the end of the day, what we're suggesting, Mr. Chairman, is that when in arriving at a market value, the cost approach applied by the department, and they are obviously, I totally get where they're coming from, but at the same time, when one's evaluating whether what the market value of the property should be I think there are analogies we can draw that the department, for its own reasons, has chosen not to consider, but that are certainly relevant to the discussion. The reason I say that, if we can turn then, we'll start on, for the 2022 brief, on our page 13, please. And one of the considerations that I took in these materials relates to what market indicators there are relative specifically to post-secondary and even more specifically college indicators, if any, in the market. And there are actually 4 that I found, and they're at the middle of page 13. So there's 4 lease transactions there, ranging from an older one of 2005 all the way through to a May 16 lease on Main Street with an effective age of 95. These are colleges. Indices 1, 2, and 4 would be considered very, very comparable, albeit private institutions, but very, very comparable and essentially competing with Red River College. The index number 3 would probably be considered somewhat removed, but still a post-secondary institution, but somewhat removed from sort of the space we're talking about in the market for true competitors with Red River College. But as you can see with indices 1, 2, and 4, the lease rates that the colleges, at the end of the day, the private colleges, of course, are operating for the purpose of making a profit. They're fulfilling an educational function, but they are, at the end of the day, private colleges that are in the business of making a profit through these endeavors. Red River College is not. But the indicators of these private colleges range from $8 to $12.50. And while I'm certainly not suggesting, as you can see from the effective ages, they are considerably different than a 2019 age. And I understand that, I acknowledge that, and I make no bones about it. A 2019 build is certainly going to command a different rent than the buildings shown on the chart on page 13. Having said that, there are limits to that in my respectful submission. And I've applied market rents that are considerably higher, trying to reflect the newer age and quality of the subject. And I've also gone through it, I haven't gone through every square foot of the building in preparation for this hearing, but I've done the same thing as Mr. Baracus, where I've walked through the building and got a sense of this new development. It is clearly built not for the purposes of efficiency, not for the purposes of a sort of a market-driven development, but as an educational institution that the college made, as I mentioned earlier, a strategic decision to build based on its own requirements with funding coming from the province. So very, very much removed from a market-based transaction. And when one looks at the market indicators, the rents that the colleges that are residing in the same space and willing to pay are certainly far less than the kind of rents that I'll be talking about shortly. If we then turn to page 14, I also looked at and the fundamentally, and actually Mr. Baracus had his description is, I think, very apt, and I agree with it. What you've got, and I'm referring now to the new building, which represents the lion's share of the assessment. You've got a building with an atrium fully to the ceiling, so you've got full open space in the middle, and you've got classrooms and lockers and offices ringing the building on each floor, ringing the building on each floor with this vertical penetration that goes right through. So it looks certainly very, very good. As far as efficiencies go, it's absolutely not efficient. It's very inefficient, but it's serving the college's needs for what it wants to present to its prospective candidates at the college. But when we're taking the market approach and we're looking at A, the college indicators that I just mentioned, but then B, the office indicators on page 14, because at the end of the day, the classrooms and the small study rooms and the administrative offices, that does have, certainly I'd suggest, one can make an analogy with an office building. And so we looked at some of the office rates for better quality A and B space for the larger transactions. And as you can see, they range from a low of $10.19 up to a high of 1656 in the better quality space. Now, again, this property is located outside of the downtown area in the Exchange District, just actually a block west of where I'm sitting right now. But we did use these as indicators for what that type of space might rent for in the market if it were to be offered. With the knowledge that it is removed from the downtown central business district by a couple of blocks. Based on all of these indicators, both looking at the colleges, the college indicators and the office indicators, as you can see at the bottom of page 14, we're suggesting a main floor rent of $15 a foot. And then for the upper floors, a rent of $12 a foot for that 74,000 square feet. And this is both a blended rate for the new addition or the new construction along with the original building, and a basement rate of $6 a square foot. The vacancy allowance that we're applying, the Class A allowance as of the 18 reference date was 7%, the Class B was 9%, we're applying 8% as sort of an appropriate standardized allowance. Turning to page 15, we're applying a shortfall rate of $12. Non-recoverable expenses, we've talked about this ad nauseum, both previous cycle and this cycle. We do believe the 5% should be applied in this case, along with the 2% structural allowance. And in terms of the cap rate, what we've supplied to the board for the purposes of this hearing is the office capitalization rate study for the 2020 assessments, the range for suburban office properties, and I know in the past, when one gets to buildings outside of the central business district, the classification that's been assigned to them as often as not, or more often than not, is a Class OS property. The range for the suburban office properties, the OS class, is between 6.25 and 7.5, and for Class B properties is 6.75. We've applied a rate of 6.75% in our valuation. So then turning to page 16. So based on the market indicators, and again, recognizing that the best comparables for colleges that compete in the same market space as Red River College were significantly lower still, but applying the rates to reflect the newer age, reflect the quality of the construction of $15, $12, and $6 respectively, then working that through, as you can see there with the income valuation and a cap rate of 6.75%, we come in at $15,309,000. Quite bluntly, Mr. Chairman, I understand that is obviously substantially lower than the permit value. The permit's encapsulating, again, I'd suggest a non-market considerations altogether. And we'd suggest that based on the market indicators, there is certainly some degree of or I should say a degree of evidence that would indicate that from a market-based perspective, applying the parameters that would be applied for the closest type of asset to this, which would be an office building, then it would indicate a significantly lower value. If the board were to find that there was some merit to the income approach, but using different parameters, both for rent and cap rate, to arrive at a different value, that would also make sense to me. But when one's talking about the construction of an asset that has absolutely nothing to do with market, and then looking at the market parameters there, I'd suggest that there has to be a middle ground to perhaps reflect both sides of that equation, and hence our position with respect to the valuation of the subject. And I was in my questioning of Mr. Barocas with respect to the cost approach. One of the items I considered in looking at all of this was the issue of super adequacy, which is a function of basically an element of functional depreciation. I'd suggest, if anything, and I take no issue with the Marshall and Swift replacement cost new figures. It's been coded properly as a college. The original building is fundamentally an office building, so I had no concerns with with those figures or with the depreciation that's been applied to the original building. But I wondered if a notion of super adequacy in this case, given the effectively what you could have done if when we're working it in a most efficient manner possible, you could get the same square footage over 4 floors without the very substantial vertical penetration in the middle of that entire new building at a significantly reduced cost. But having said that, I am defaulting and relying on the market approach, on the income approach to value, and ask the board to consider accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Barocas?
Yeah, just a couple, please. If we could go to page 10. It's the section just that says highest and best use. So you'd agree that its current use as a post-secondary educational institution is the highest and best use of this property?
Absolutely. Based on what I saw, the post-secondary use is entirely appropriate.
Okay, and then in regards to just tying that into the kind of assess it as an office. When I look at page, or rather the same page, but point number 2, would you agree that having this building used entirely as basically a one premise office, given its physical, would be rather unlikely or highly speculative?
Not highly speculative. I'd agree that it would require, so what you've got, and as you correctly identified, you've got this nice building with the vertical penetration, and you've got offices and lockers ringing throughout the 5 floors. If one were to get one of the larger office users, Mr. Barocas, I guess I'd suggest the market would be limited without question to have one user need all of that space. So it would be somewhat unlikely, but I would say that it's certainly the odds are better than it being remote, given some of the significant office tendencies in the city. But that's not the situation right now, and there would be a limited market for that space with one user without question.
Okay, and then just on page 13, you have some post-secondary college indicators. They're older buildings. Are the tenants, are they the owners of the building, of these buildings? Or
no, these are leased properties.
okay, and just because I don't have addresses, so I can't review. Are they physically, would you say similar in terms of layout compared to the subject property, or are they more similar to like a traditional office building?
They would be, the index number 1 was actually originally a retail building, but completely retrofitted for the college that occupies it. So that one's had significant work to meet the needs of that college. Index number 2 would be more of a traditional office building, as would index number 4, which are the 3 indices that I'd suggested are in the same space as Red River College.
Okay, and then so just to be clear, on page 14, the square footage, the net market rent that's been applied, that would include areas including auditorium area, locker area, common area. That would be something that you'd include as well in the square footage rents?
Indeed, the square footage that I've applied is precisely the same as the department's at 108,803. So it would include all those areas.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, any questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure who to direct the question to, because I may have missed asking Mr. Barocas, but Mr. Barocas did make a statement that the other portion of Red River College, the Princess Campus, I believe, was done on the cost approach. So, Mr. Reimer, were you involved in that one? And if so, why would we have done this one on the, by the way that you've done it?
Yeah, indeed. So the quick answer, 2 quick answers. Yes, I was involved in that. And we actually, with respect to that campus, we had reviewed and appealed that property in the past, and notwithstanding, Mr. Brokus is exactly right. I believe the department applied the cost approach. We did not in our materials and our review, and we applied the income approach, and ultimately the final value that we were able to agree upon was based on just on that. It was based on a final value, but we were getting to it through exactly the same different means. We'll see. And I don't presume to speak for the department, but I do believe in arriving at the final agreed value. I don't believe it's likely they change their approach from the cost approach to the income approach. But our approach for that campus was also based on the income approach, again, on the same premise that it does have a lot of, there are market indicators, it has a lot of similar characteristics to an office type building. And we arrived at our final value that we agreed upon using that approach. But
Okay.
Ms. Knight, to answer your question, and again, I don't presume to speak for Mr. Brokus of the department, but I believe we arrived at the same value using the two different approaches.
Different ways. Okay. So what about the campus at Notre Dame?
The
Red
campus at Notre Dame, I have been involved in that in the past. I don't believe that we have attempted an income approach on that campus. It hasn't been the subject of appeal, other than liability and classification. It hasn't been the subject of a value appeal for some time.
Okay, so
That's a fair question.
So you're using the income approach because it could be used as other things. You're saying that it could be put out into the market as another type of property, not just a college, correct?
Exactly right. It would lend itself to, and Mr. Brooks' questions were a good one. It could lend itself, the easiest way for a property like this to be offered to the market would be for a very, very significant office user that would be interested in taking a very substantial amount of space, over 100,000 square feet of space, and the market is going to be very limited. But recall, what we've got for the physical asset is you've got the offices and the classrooms ringing the entire building through the 5 floors. In theory, it would be possible to have each of the classrooms, they've got their own separate doors and locked doors. You could, in theory, have a multi-tenant approach where there are these common areas,
Right.
and you've got the different segments that are ringing the building as a multi-tenant. I'd suggest there would be more required in order to truly make it a multi-tenant property, but it is, in theory at least, something that's possible. The more
Okay.
likely scenario is a single user.
So then let's just look at that multi-tenant or single user. Is there parking for if this was changed to office buildings for that place to bring in all those workers into there? And then the second part of that question would be, as an office building in its location, do you think that would be its best use?
Very good questions. Parking would be a problem. Parking
Mhm.
would absolutely be a problem. Locationally, and that's partly what I considered in my approach, Mr. Chairman, and locationally, it's a problem. It's not as good a location it's outside, as I mentioned, outside the central business district. Having said that, if we go briefly, Mr. Chairman and Midnight, if I might refer you back to page 13.
Okay, just a second. All right.
Index number 2 on King Street. That's within, again, this is a college, that's within a stone's throw. Well, a little more than a stone's throw. It's in the same area though as the subject.
Okay. And that one's being rented, correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
All right. All right.
Very
Thank you.
good questions.
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, any questions?
Well, I think just kind of hinging on Diane's question. So what do you feel the highest and best use is for that property?
The highest and best use, the highest and best use and the use to which it's being put right now is definitely a post-secondary institution. That though, and this is fundamental to my submission, with greatest respect to the assessor, that doesn't mean that one can't take an income-based or a market-driven approach to it, given the indicators we've got from other post-secondary and direct competitors, the private colleges in the market. So whether I do believe that converting this premise or this building into an office use there would need to be, especially in multi-tenant, there would need to be some work that's being done. Having said that, we do have indicators of colleges. Colleges still need to rent space for their operations, and they have been. And so when one looks at the rents that the colleges are paying, it I believe supports the kind of income approach that I'm applying. And there's no distinction between some of these premises where colleges are renting the space versus the asset that we're talking about, save and except obviously for the fact that this is brand new and it's been constructed to their spec. Again, not without reference to market considerations, but with reference to their needs. So, Ms. Duncan, it's the highest and best use would be as a college campus, but I'd suggest that doesn't then translate to a requirement to use the cost approach, because there are market indicators for college type of premises within the city.
Okay, and then my other question would be, do you agree with the city that it was purpose-built for post-secondary?
It was absolutely, it was built to Red River's spec and with their considerations in mind, based on the funding from the province, without question.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions.
Okay, Mr. Reimer, would it be fair to say that your comparables are like far, far smaller than Red River College or any of the large educational institutions in Winnipeg?
They are. These are, Mr. Chairman, you're talking about both the office and but specifically the college indicators. They are much smaller. Yes.
The college indicators.
Yeah.
And we're not, for Red River, we're not just talking about the 108,000 here, but we're talking about Princess as well as the Notre Dame campus, and then also it comes to mind universities of Winnipeg and Manitoba and that sort of thing. They're far, far larger than any of these private colleges. Would that be fair to say?
They are, although there's no market indicators that I could find for the U of M or U of W in terms of leasing significant swaths of space within the data that we had. But yes, those campuses are many, many times greater than the subject, especially the U of M. Okay, so
I'll be free with you. The concern I have is using these, well, really 3 market indicators to define what the market for large institutions would be. Isn't that kind of like the tail wagging the dog in this situation?
I wouldn't, I understand the concern, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't quite frame it that way. And that what we are trying to do is say, okay, for those institutions, again, private institutions, but to the extent that they are representing what in that world, in that educational space, what they're willing to spend on rent. And to be clear again, and I'm referring to the college indicators on page 13. This isn't space that they've just moved into and taken as is. There's been significant work, as I mentioned at the bottom of page 13, especially indices 1 and 2, significant work to make it fit for their purpose. So would I have liked more indicators and larger indicators? Without question, but I do believe it's fair to look at what players within the same space are willing to pay based on the space that's been fitted and retrofitted to their needs. So, but I have nothing to offer you, Mr. Chairman, that would be truly something comparable in terms of size and scale at 100,000 square feet. So that there's no question about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I have one further question.
Go ahead.
If this was a Class A property, what would the cap rate be?
Very good question, Mr. Chairman. We've submitted a capitalization rate study for office property, so you need not turn to it, but I'll just refer to the page number.
Okay.
A Class A cap rate for the purposes of the 2020-2022 assessment, according to Altus submissions, is between 6.25% and 6.5%. So at the low end, 6.25%, and at the upper end, 6.5%.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's move on then to the 319 Elgin, the 2023 assessment year. Okay, so I recognizing again, there's the class and liability, and imagine, Mr. Reimer, you're requesting confirmation again for the 23 year.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Mr. Brock is on the value then for 2023.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just read it in and be brief because it is the same difference in valuation methodology. File number 23-28. Roll number 13099071910 Elgin, 2023. So we're looking at the April 1st, 2021 reference date, assessed value 25,960,000. So it's the same property that we just discussed. We have under the cost approach. I've included the same pictures and evidence. Only difference would be line comparables and also the rerunning of the cost approach to encapsulate the newer, rather the more recent reference date. So without going on any further, I think we've heard a good discussion in regards to what we're deciding on here. So I'm just going to leave it right there. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Reimer?
If I could just ask previous questions asked and answered, please, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Michelle, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Diane, questions?
Just because I didn't ask you the first time, Mr. Baracus, the Red River campus at Notre Dame, you did on the replacement cost approach as well?
Yes.
And Princess as well?
Yeah, it's all
Okay.
cost approach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess following up on that question, what about the universities, Winnipeg and Manitoba? Do you have any idea how those were arrived at?
I believe those are done on cost as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, Mr. Reimer, you can begin on the 2023 tax year.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and agree entirely with Mr. Brokus. It's the same differences, the same framework for the discussion. If I could then ask the board briefly to turn to page 13. So again, these are the college indicators that we were able to find with some updated information. A couple of the leases then starting in April of 2020. Indices 1, 2, and 3 in this case would be the institutions that would be considered to be operating in precisely the same space as Red River. Index 4, not so much, but still a post-secondary institution. But we can see there the rates as indicated, a low 593, which we're not suggesting would be comparable to the subject, but it is one we've put in there for based on the review for specifically these colleges. Indices 1 and 2 being probably the most relevant. And then turning to page 14, again, we've got some updated rents for the better quality office space class A and B. So for the purposes of our valuation, and again, this is going to be a matter ultimately of the board determining if the market approach based on the income approach to value has relevance, which we believe it does. So you can see based on all of the indicators then at the bottom of page 14, for the purposes of the 2023 assessment, we've applied a main floor rate of $17.50, an upper floor rate of $12, and a basement rate of $6. The vacancy allowance, turning to page 15, the vacancy allowance for the 2023 assessment for Class A is 10%, for Class B is 11%, and for Class S, the suburban office is 11%. We've applied 10%, applied a shortfall rate of $12, requesting that the non-recoverable expense allowance of 5% be applied along with the 2% other allowance or structural. Capitalization rate, we've applied 6.75%. And then turning to page 16, running that through, it arrives at a value of 15,356,000 or 357,000, I should say. The question had been asked earlier by Ms. Knight as to the cap rate for Class A office. So to save the board some time, I will just, and it's in the study, but I'll just make that reference now. The Class A capitalization rates for the 2023 assessment that we're suggesting are 6.25. So for the prior assessment, the range had been 6.25 to 6.5. For the 23 assessment, it's only 6.25. So that's the rate that would be applied based on the Class A parameters. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Barakis?
I just asked my questions asked and answered, follow through. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Michelle?
No questions, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. We'll take a 10-minute break till 10:15 and then come back and do the second property on Princess Avenue.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome back. We'll move on to 265 Princess Street. So, Nicole, can you swear in Mr. Story?
I sure can. Hi, Mr. Story, please state your full name.
Jarrett Story.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do, first of all, 265 Princess for the 2022 tax year. And for the panel, I believe that is labeled as item 4 for the applicant, not item 3. So,
Oh,
Oh, is there something?
well, I think the applicant's briefs were just reversed. The 2023 year is labeled as item 3 for the applicant, and the 2022 year is labeled as
Oh,
item 4.
oh, okay.
my apologies. The girls must have labeled them wrong.
So you can see,
Okay.
I actually read these things in advance.
Yeah. Did you want me to change that for you, Mr. Chair?
No, that's fine, as long
Okay.
as the board is aware of it and not looking at the wrong brief. So, Mr. Barakis, you can begin.
Right, thank you very much. File 23-25, roll number 13081493100 265 Princess Street. It's an apartment. It's at the corner of Logan and Princess. So one building, 5 stories, built in 2020, 88 suites, 15 outdoor parking. The assessed value by the model is 13,787,000. I will make a recommendation though. If you go to page 3, basically all I'm doing is I'm changing the cap rate to 5.25, which generates a value of 13,130,000. So I'll just take a pause right there.
Sorry, what was that
All
number? 13 million?
13,130,000 rounded.
Okay, Mr. Story, how do you feel about that?
We agree to the cap rate at 5.25, Mr. Chair, but we would like to proceed on the basis of an adjustment to the NOI based on the rents.
All right. So then Ms. Barakis, continue then, please.
Okay, no problem. So I believe now that we get the cap, I think the expense ratio is agreed to unless there's something's changed. We're just going to focus mainly on the income. So the breakdown of the property you can see on page 3. So there's 88 units, 11 bachelor, 53 1-bedroom, and 24 2-bedroom. You've got an average monthly rent of $1,102.50. So that when you work that through with our 5.25% cap rate, that's how we get the 13,130,000. No amendment to the expense ratio or the income. Got rent comparables here. because the property was built in 2020, and our reference is 2018, we don't have any pre-reference date mailers. We do know based on their income and expense mailers what they earn, so what they get rent-wise, so that we use the factored back figure to come up with our average monthly rent. So that is an override based on the actuals. However, we do have rent comparables here. In the general.
So let me be clear, you're factoring back the actual rents?
Well, so yeah, so on page 3, because I'll probably be asked average monthly rent per unit, that would be an override rent, not a model rent. And that was determined by looking at what they're actually getting and then bringing it back based on rent control increases to serve as an indication of market appreciation, even though a property of this vintage would be outside the restraints of rent control because it's newer. We use that just as an indicator in regards to rent increases in the city. Regardless, on page 4, we've got comparables 1 through 4 in the general area. So you can see they range from $1,069 to just over $12,000. We're at $1,102.50. So what I was able to do is I noticed one of the comparables there, comparable 3, which is a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. It doesn't have the 11 bachelors. It does have more 2 bedroom units. So what it was an older building that was renovated. So it's got a 1976 effective year built on it. They have an average monthly rent reported to us at $1,189. And you can see on page 5, see the location. It's stone's throw away from our subject property, 2-minute walk. And then I just dragged some pictures from the materials online for this property to just compare them physically, how it looks in relation to our subject property here today in terms of level of finish. So as you scroll through those pictures, go to page 10. And then on page 13, that's when the pictures of the subject property begin. Rather, on page 17, page 13, it shows some of the features that's listed on the website in terms of laundry, pub access to a fitness facility, wasn't aware of that. Complimentary Wi-Fi and social areas, dog run. So I was more concerned about like the overall quality of the suites. So you look at page 17, you can see the outside of the subject. It's new. And then you look at the interior finishes. And I would say that they are at very least highly comparable to the best comparable, which is again a 2-minute walk away. That property that's a 2-minute walk away, it's got rent of $1,189. We're at $1,102. They're a bit higher. Looks like their gross floor area per unit is a bit higher, but again, that includes common area, so that could be. It's not totally clear, and we also have 11 bachelor units. Comparable 3 does not. So it would make sense that even though the finishes are highly similar, that comparable 3 would have rents that are a bit higher than our subject property. So I didn't make a change to the rents then, and I know what they're reporting to us on their what they're asking for when we were putting the property onto the roll, so we set the rent correctly. So I would say that 311 Alexander serves as very strong support for the rent that we've applied to the property, with all other parameters, unless something's changed, already settled. My recommendation is to use the city NOI 5.25 cap, which equates $13,130,000 that's my evidence. Thank you.
Mr. Story, questions?
I have a few questions, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you. Mr. Brokus, have you ever visited this property?
I don't believe I have.
Okay. And then just to be very clear, the factor back method that's used by the city relies on post-reference data. So we have an April 1, 2018 reference date. And if I understand you correctly, you're using, is it the 2023 data and then factoring it back?
Yeah, so let me just get, is it the 2022 or 2023 when we got the, we asked for how much income they can collect, and then we, which what they're going to get or they're collecting on their rent roll. I don't have it in my brief here, but then we want to really recognize when we put it in the system, we put it in the correct level. So it's not too high, not too low. And that's how we set it. But I mean, the comparables do support, in my opinion, the rent that we've applied outside of that analysis that we did.
Okay. And I think you mentioned, though, and quite correctly, this property, based on its age, would not be under the purview of the RTB increase guidelines, correct?
100%.
Okay. And then I guess just further to this, the post-reference rent that you're using as a starting point, would that include incentives or discounts? Would you factor those in, or are you simply using an asking rent?
I wasn't the one who put this one on the roll. I can check the notes, but it shouldn't, like in terms of like potential.
Okay.
If they're reporting like a discount, that's something that we would take into consideration.
Okay. And then, so on page 3, just before we get to the rental comps, can you tell me how much the city is suggesting a bachelor would be commanding a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom on a per suite type basis?
Well, we don't have that breakdown. What we would do is we would look at the potential overall, and then that just gets divided by the number of suites.
Okay. So just to be fair, though, then effectively the city can't tell us what this workup is suggesting a 1-bedroom might rent for in this property at the reference date, correct?
That's correct. Like just doing the math, you know, we're not saying like this is just an average rent, but obviously a bachelor is going to be less than a 2-bedroom.
Okay. Just want to go through your rental comps here very quickly, and I don't disagree that Bag Factory Lofts at 311 are probably your best comp here, but can we agree that number 4 is a Manitoba housing property?
Yeah, again, once I saw that Bag Factory Loft building, that's basically what I'm putting the weight of my analysis on. So
okay.
I didn't really investigate the other ones much further.
Okay, so should we disregard them or and limit our scope to Alexander?
Well, I mean, if 320 Austin is a Manitoba housing, I mean, I wouldn't use that one.
Okay. And then the Porterhouse at 165 McDermott, that's the East Exchange. That's Rory and McDermott, correct?
Yes, that is on the east side of Main Street.
Right, and it is let's call it a turn of the 20th century warehouse conversion. So that year built in 1966. It's actually I believe that original building is from 1906, and then it was renovated in I think 2016. Is that your understanding?
I believe so. I'm looking at a picture of the outside. Yeah. It's had a bunch of renovations to it.
Okay, and also the interesting thing, this is our client's building, so I have some familiarity with it. Those 4 2-bedroom units are actually what they call townhouse units. Are you aware of that? And the rents are substantially higher in those than they would be in the 1-bedroom.
Yeah, I didn't put much. Again, 311 Alexander, other than knowing what they're actually reporting to us, that's where I put when I saw that, I'm like, we're probably pretty.
Okay, and then similar question about 92 Princess. Now that's the West Exchange between that'd be between McDermott and Bannatyne. That's that would be the old penthouse furniture building. I think we would know it as it's now Interior Illusions. That's that property, right? It's another warehouse conversion from the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah, I mean, in the area, there's only so many you can kind
Yeah,
of from.
yeah.
There's not too many popping up, so
Yeah. And that gross floor area per unit, that's probably including the retail space for that one, is it not? I'm guessing.
I would imagine so.
Okay. And okay, so that leaves us now with 311 Alexander. So I just want to go through that quickly. Now, our property, and you rightly pointed out that the suite mix, and this is important mathematically, we have 12.5% bachelor units, 60.23% one bedroom, and 27.27% two bedroom units. But the 311 Alexander, it's over 70% two bedroom units. So that should effectively change the average monthly rent per unit, should it not?
Yeah, I mean, their rent is higher on as
Yeah.
reported.
Yeah, and again, that one is also a warehouse conversion, correct? That was converted in 2015.
Yeah, looking at the picture on page 6, it's pretty.
Yeah.
It's exactly as you described.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other interesting thing there was they have 44 stalls that are on. It's on the same roll, but it's effectively a separate parcel of land. Are you aware of that?
I am not knowing.
Okay, so we have 15 stalls and they have 44. So that should also affect that average monthly rent, correct?
No, parking is outside of that. There's a portion where
Oh.
they have the actual rent parsed from the total, and then that's what we use. And then parking is something extra, but that's not rent. That's additive to what appears on the third row from the bottom.
Yeah, so that's okay. That's my next question then. And Mr. Chair, I have provided some rebuttal to this effect, but in terms of the relevant appeal showing the 2016 mailer, they are showing $988 per month, including parking and storage. So did you review the mailer when looking at the average monthly rent per unit for 311 Alexander?
Again, it's not in my evidence here, so I can't comment on it.
Okay, and I suppose you didn't look at that submission, but the actual square footage per unit for that property is not 980. It's the average is 683. You aware of that or no?
Well, I mean, is that net or is that gross?
The square footage, that's the average
units.
square footage of, yeah. So the units range between the one bedrooms are 545 and the two bedrooms are 744. Total leasable 60,103, giving you 683 average square footage.
For Alexander?
Yeah. And that's in their brief. Yeah. Okay. I think, Mr. Chair, those are my questions. Yeah, those are my questions for this year. Thank you very much.
Okay, Michelle, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Diane?
So you brought, Mr. Story brought up the square footage size of the property at Alexander. What's the square footage of the 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom suites on Princess then?
I don't have that information. I'll see if it's on their website. I mean, that because that gross floor area again can be misleading.
Mhm.
Typed in the website here, it says we've got a 1-bedroom at 497, and then we've got 2 bedrooms ranging from 639, and then there's another one that's 736. So again, that is in line with the existence of area in the building outside of the suites, bumping up the gross floor area per unit, and that would be the same for all of the comparables, including 311 Alexander as the applicant brought up.
Okay, so then a building that was built in 96 as opposed to 2020, even though they're finished similarly based on your pictures, would you still expect the same rent for those buildings then?
I mean, when I'm looking at the finish, they do look pretty similar. I guess it would come down to maybe the newer one would have slightly higher rent if it was a equivalent unit breakdown, you know, bachelor, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. Just looking at page 13, no, I haven't inspected the building, but it does say that, I mean, all the, it says there was a 24/7 car laundry on each floor. There's accessible units, building security with fob access and cameras, complimentary Wi-Fi, dual elevators, energy efficient. I suppose the energy efficiency would be something that a tenant might look into as an advantage, an exercise room. So I would say that the newer build probably would rent for a bit more if everything else was the same. They're right next to each other.
All right, thank you.
All right, Michelle, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, what was the modeled rent for this that was overridden?
The modeled rent, I don't have that in my brief. And again, that depending on what income quality we would set the building at, that model rent would vary. And that's why we do consider the actuals, because, you know, if we set that wrong, it could be too high, too low. Off the bat, we look at the actuals to know where to set it in our model, so it's reflective of that going forward.
The problem I have with the way you've done it, I mean, you using post-reference information. So I have a real concern with that. Let's put it that way.
So again, when we're setting the rents, we're looking at the actuals, but it's not like I'm not coming in here with comparables to support the rents. And I'm not just saying it's the actuals and this is what it is. I've provided photographs and pre-reference date rents, property that's a 2-minute walk away, which has similar level finish, even though in my opinion, I think the newer one looks nicer. If you look at the pictures on page 18. So their rents that they reported to us when we brought them back are reflective of the comparable 2-minute walk away. So if you don't like our methodology, that's fine. It's based on being as accurate as possible, and comparable 3 serves as strong evidence, as well as comparables 1 and 2, in my opinion, of course.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Story, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so as we've established, we're here at 265 Princess. This is the, I guess you would best describe this as the edge of Chinatown. This is Princess and Logan. If you cross Logan, you are then into the Logan CPR neighborhood. So we're at the edge of Chinatown, a new build built in 2020. We do have 11 bachelor units. We have 53 1-bedroom units and 24 2-bedroom units. Ultimately, we are requesting a value of $11,477,000. And just to sort of cut to the chase here, rents are going to be our major issue. We now agree with the 5.25 as per our original submission. And it is indeed a new building, and we are in that 39% or so, which is what we would typically expect to see for a newer property. Now, apologize, my workup wasn't included in the original submission, but I did submit it afterward. But all the figures are here. It just makes it a little easier to look at it in comparison. So ultimately, because and Mr. Chair, you're quite right, we can't use post-reference material that's 4 or 5 years after the fact, because a market participant certainly wouldn't be aware of those figures or what was being asked. So we have looked for rental proxies. We've used suburban newer developments, higher quality developments, I would suggest to you, in suburban areas. I do not have any new builds in the downtown with rents germane to the reference date, but we have looked at a wide swath, and we've typically submitted these comparables for some of the recent supplementaries that we've looked at. So you can see very clearly, this is on my page 8, that we have units ranging from 711 feet on the 1 bedroom up to over 1,000 square feet, and then similar for 2 and 3 bedrooms. For this property, our bachelor units are 403 square feet. Our 1 bedroom units range from 497 to 569, and our 2 bedroom units range from 639 to 736. These are reasonably small units. I visited the property this past Friday, so I was there very recently, and I visited for the purpose of our exercise today. So ultimately, based on the size of these units, and based on the fact that we do have a newer build here, we used a rent per square foot. I believe it can become distortive to start to use a average rent per door. And as I pointed out in the assessor's submission, when you have a higher preponderance of, say, 2 bedroom units, and you start to use an average, you can distort properties, their income, if you're not using, let's call it apples to apples. So we looked at these on a very in a direct fashion and looked at them per square foot, and we've elected to use $2 per square foot for the bachelor units, $1.75 for the 1 bedroom units on a per square foot basis, and then $1.50 for the 2 bedroom units on a per square foot basis. Clearly, as the units become larger, they should economies of scale should be at play, and these factors are fully supported by the comps that we've submitted. I would also point out that if we look at, and I have this in rebuttal, but if we look at Bag Factory 311, their actual their average rent is $988, and ours comes out to, I think, $937 or so. But theirs also have many more parking stalls, and they have a superior suite mix. So this all makes sense. I don't dispute the fact that 311 is a good comp, but when we compare it on an apples to apples basis, it does indeed support what we're looking for here today. So ultimately, and I should point out, we have considered laundry. We've used $2 per week per bed, which I think is very, very fair, maybe even optimistic, but that equates to $11,648 in terms of miscellaneous income that comes by way of laundry. And then we've used $65 for the outdoor parking per door, less the vacancy. We have accepted the 3% vacancy. That would be equivalent to what we would expect to see in the market, citywide anyway, though that may be a bit optimistic, to be fair. So using a potential market rent of $996,621, factoring a 3% vacancy allowance, and then adding $11,648 for laundry and $11,349 for parking, we come to an EGI, an effective gross income of $989,719, accepting the 39% expense ratio. We come to an NOI of $602,541, which we then capitalize with a 5.25% cap rate, which is no longer in dispute. And that leads us to an estimated market value as of April 1, 2018 of $11,476,974, which we then round to $11,477,000. As I mentioned, Mr. Chair, I do have some rebuttal, but I'll save that for afterward. But that is my main presentation, and I thank you. I'm open to your questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Baracus?
Yeah, just on page 8, sticking with the rent, that's where we differ. So I know you don't have any addresses for these properties. Are any of these in the downtown area at all?
No. So you have, just so we're being very clear, though, you have the addresses because we've used these a number of times. But no, as I mentioned, these are suburban. So typically we would expect these to be larger suites and command a higher rental rate, but these are the newer builds, higher quality. So we're trying to be very fair. So, but no, to answer your question shortly, these are not in the downtown.
Okay, and would it be fair to say that those seeking to live downtown and those seeking to live in the suburbs would be two different potential pools of tenants?
Perhaps, though I would suggest to you that the suburban rents would typically be higher than the downtown rents, specifically in Chinatown on the cusp of Logan CPR.
Okay, and I know all season this year for 2023, I didn't see this per square foot method. Why are you applying this now to make rental determinations when you didn't in the past?
Well, we're looking at supplementaries, right? So it would be erroneous methodologically to use asking rents 4 or 5 years after the reference date. So we're looking to what a developer's expectation would be. We don't have any. You'd have to expect that we don't have any information regarding what is being achieved or what is being requested from the market in the future. So I think that. Sorry, if your question is why are we using this? Well, frankly, because we think it's the most fair way to look at these properties, especially if you have smaller suites. So it wouldn't be fair to look at much larger suites and assume that the rent would be the same as they would be for smaller suites. Typically, larger suites rent at a premium, and typically, 2 bedrooms rent for more than a 1 bedroom, 1 bedroom rents for more than a bachelor. So I think this is the most fair way to make our estimation, particularly for supplementary assessments.
Okay, so just to be clear, you feel that suburban rents of newer buildings are better market indicators than downtown rents of older buildings that have been extensively renovated. Would that be correct?
No, not necessarily. I think that the suburban rents would probably represent the higher end for the new builds. So if anything, it may draw those rents upward in the downtown. Again, we're at the edge of Chinatown, and that's been a very difficult area to develop. I don't know that it would be fair to say that they would command a higher rent than a brand new amenity-rich suburban property. But we are looking at what we'll call developer expectation with this swath of comps, and I think that if anything, they may be optimistic, but I think it's fair.
All right, fair enough. Those are my questions.
Okay, Michelle, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Diane? Are you muted, Diane?
Sorry about that. So, Mr. Story, you made a comment about, I'm not even actually exactly sure what the comment meant in regards to Chinatown and the expectation of Chinatown, and that the ones further out in the suburbs maybe would be getting a better rent and different people looking for them, but yet the vacancy you're using is still 3%. So there must be a lot of people still looking to be in this quote Chinatown area. Is that correct?
No. So the Chinatown developments, when you look at the multifamily properties in Chinatown, at least that I'm aware of, they're all at this stage supported their rent geared to income. So they would be either Manitoba Housing or some other such provider. So, in terms of, this is a new build, this is a new private market apartment in Chinatown. You're quite correct. 3% would be quite low. We'll see in the next cycle that what we'll call the downtown and downtown neighborhoods have experienced higher vacancy than the rest of the city. But again, we're not using, this is the sort of the challenge of these supplementaries when we must stick to the reference date, the economic reference date of April 1, 2018. Right. It would be difficult to submit evidence suggesting that the vacancy would be any higher than 3%. Now, is there some expectation that there's more risk potentially for this location? Yes, certainly. And we've used 5.25. We very well could have used a higher cap rate, but it is a new property, and I suppose the what happens is remains to be seen. So it's a good question. If we had better evidence regarding market apartments in the Chinatown area, we may have used a higher cap rate, or I'm sorry, a higher vacancy rate. We have agreed with the 3% because it is similar to what we would expect to see on a citywide average at the reference date of April 1,
So
2018.
this
But,
whole thing
yeah.
really boils down to rental rate, correct?
It boils down to the rental rate, and it also, as a methodological question, it boils down to whether or not the board agrees with the parameters that are put upon us here, where we ought not to look past the reference date and factor back or use some such methodology. So
Mhm.
it is, I think, important that we look to what would have been known at the
Right.
reference date, and that puts us in the minds
For
of
example, the
participants.
comparables then.
The comparables are fine, but it's I don't think it's appropriate to support the factor back methodology by using the comparables.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I have no questions that haven't been asked, but Mr. Story, you said you had a rebuttal.
I do, sir. Yes, and I'll be very, very quick. I don't mean to put
Do we have that, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm going to, Mr. Story, do you want all 5 documents presented?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll just run through them very, very quickly.
Just wait until we have
Yep.
them.
Okay, let me just make sure it all uploads here. Okay, so just give it a few seconds and then refresh. They're labeled file 23-5 applicant rebuttal, and they're labeled with their titles.
Okay.
And Mr. Barakis, I will email that to you right now. Okay. It's
And
on its way.
which rebuttal are we to be looking at?
So I suppose the first one that I'd like to speak to, and I would just like to have it on the record, Mr. Chair. I don't know that we're going to have a major disagreement about this, but I have submitted the Broadway Square decision, and that is the court decision that, of course, reflects that we ought not to consider post-reference information. So I have submitted that. We can certainly go into it if you'd like, but I would like it to be on the record.
I think everybody's familiar with that one.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. Nope. I've also included the RTP increase document as well as the exemption document. So based on the age of this property, Mr. Chair, this property is not indeed bound by the increases applied to other properties that are outside of the it is indeed exempt from the rental guidelines. I've also included the increased document, and that's the purpose for showing that, Mr. Chair, is that if you are to take post-reference material and then quote unquote factor back that material, you'll see that the allowable increase for 2023 is 0%. The allowable increase for 2022 is 0%. 2021 is 1.6, and so on and so forth. So I've included that there for reference, and I've also included the 2018 CMHC market report, and it does show you that same sample rental increases for the private market. Sorry, I'm just going to pull this up here. I believe it should be around 4% or so, but that's just included there too. Oh yeah, the average same sample rents increased by 3.8%. So you can see very clearly that the RTB permissible increases do not keep pace with the private market. So despite the fact that, or on top of the fact that we ought not to use post-reference material, that factor back methodology for exempt properties will also end up with a distortion. That is our position. So I've included that. And then just finally, I'd mentioned in my questioning regarding 311 Alexander, I have included it is the 2016 income and expense page from a previous appeal that I was able to find, and you can indeed see that they are including, when you include, I should say, the storage and parking, that their average rent is $988 per month. So that figure that's included here in the assessor's brief is not accurate. I just wanted to be very, very clear. That is the summary of my rebuttal, so I'll leave that there. But those are the main points that I wanted to address, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Baracus, questions on the rebuttal?
Let me see here. No questions. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, questions on the rebuttal?
No questions, thank you.
Diane?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move forward in time to the 2023 tax year. Reference date April 1st, 2021. So, Mr. Baracus, you can begin.
Okay. Just for this property, I'm gonna submit rebuttal to his rebuttal, but I'll go through this one first. And then while he's talking, I'll send it over as a PDF.
Okay,
Because I'm a bit, I don't think I have what he has, but I also have the rest of the mailer as well. So I'll present this, and while he's talking, I'll turn that into PDF and send it over, because in regards to this property, it is pre-reference date information, so I would apply to both, and it would serve as support. So if you'll give me a moment, what I'll do
okay,
is I'll pull up 2023 for this.
Is this for 311 Alexander, Matt?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I've got something here too that we can discuss.
Okay, so file 23-24, roll number 13081493100. 265 Princess. We're talking about 2023 here, April 1st, 2021. Reference date. Assessed value 50,218,000. Again, it's the same building. So the difference is we have a 4.8 cap rate on this one. I'm not making any recommendation on this one. Again, so outside of cap rate, which I'm sure you've heard a ton of already this season, we've got the rent comparables for this go around on page 4. So what I did is I used the trying to find the best comparable approach. So what I found is comparable 4 on 316 Ross, 1965, but it was renovated into becoming an apartment. It was not an apartment before. It's got an average reported monthly rent of 1,151, and we are at 1,173 for the rent on this one. Pictures of the best comparable. You can see locationally, again, very similar neighborhood. It's in the same neighborhood. Pardon me, 4-minute walk away. You can see the picture of the outside here. And then on page 7, you can see the pictures of the interior. I think actually the floor is the same. So looking at the finishings, that property, pages 6, 7, and 8. And then you see our pictures again of the subject property, which begin on page 16. You can see they're highly similar. So highly similar in the same area. So that's where I put the weight of my analysis on, to use pre-reference date information to support our rents, 1,173. So we have our cap rate table on page 9. I know from the familiar faces on the panel, you've probably heard this a few times already. So basically, we have a range here going from 3.6 to 5.75 in terms of what I was calculating when I used the income and expense mailers and the sale price. So the newer build, we only got one newer build that's at 4.79 We're at 4.8 on this one. That's the best indicator we have. So it serves as support to our modeled 4.8 cap rate. So without going any further, because we kind of discussed the physical last go around, I'll just leave my presentation right there. Assessed value 15,218,000. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Story?
Yes, okay, so just again, we didn't talk about cap rate last time, but so some of these issues, Mr. Chair, will center around cap rate. Mr. Barocas, this parking ratio would be considered a negative, would it not? Only 15 outdoor stalls to 88 units?
If it was something that affected their vacancy rate, but I mean, people who rent these types of places, often they rent these types of places because they don't require parking. For instance, I have a friend who lives at 230 Princess, and it works for him because he doesn't have a car and he wants to live downtown. And living downtown, you have access to amenities and surroundings that are different from the suburbs. So I wouldn't say, so if it was in Linden Woods or where some of your comparables are, I would definitely agree with you, but I can't conclusively say that.
But okay, regardless of anecdotal information about one person's needs or desires, the owner charges for the stalls. So that's a revenue stream, correct? And if you have more stalls, you're able to charge more you're able to charge them, correct?
Yeah, you're probably charging for parking.
Yeah, and you had mentioned something about vacancy, but there would be nobody in the market would have any sense of what the vacancy in this property would have been at April 21, correct? They only started leasing in April 22.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Page 3, again, the department is not able to tell the owner or the panel what they're suggesting a 2-bedroom, a 1-bedroom, or a bachelor might be renting for in this property. Is that a fair comment?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Vacancy rate in the downtown neighborhoods at the reference date is indeed higher than 3.2%, is it not?
I don't have that in my evidence anywhere.
Okay. Is all of this modeled, or is the rental rate overridden and then the balance is modeled as per
The
the
balance is
last?
modeled.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
the balance is modeled.
Okay, and that cap rate of 4.8% is modeled as well, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Now you'd suggested a 5.25, but if we look cycle over cycle, have you seen anything in the market reports that would suggest a 45 basis point compression in multifamily?
Well, this is based on my own analysis, not an agreement that was made at a different court with a different reference date, with considerations that were meant for agreeing to cap rates for age groups historic to this one. So when we negotiate cap rates, we do 1946 and earlier. So when the representative from your department it's kind of like we make an overall agreement. I still overall believe that 5% for the last go around would be more accurate, but based on our municipal board agreement and honoring that, I'll make the change. But I do believe 4.8 based on the sale at 2390 McPhillips, again, though it's suburban because we only have so many sales to work with, serves as the best but not perfect piece of evidence to support the 4.8 cap rate I use.
Okay, and that Lady Joyce apartment on McPhillips, that would typically, one would expect that it would command a higher rent. Is that not a fair comment?
I don't think so, no.
You don't think so? Okay. Do you not think that that's a more desirable location next to the hospital, next to the Walmart versus the this new building, Chinatown, Logan and Princess?
Well, I mean, you've probably gone by it. It's like basically next to the giant Walmart parking lot. It serves two different markets.
Right.
So again, it's not, if we had a sale downtown of a newer building,
yeah,
it would definitely be better evidence, but that's the best we have.
Okay, and then on page 10, just quickly to stay on cap rate, it would appear that in your evidence, you're showing us that the brokers are not showing us anything below 5%. And in fact, the low rise A or low rise B would start at either 5.25 or 5.5, correct?
Colliers has low rise at 5 to 6. Cushman has it at 5 to 5 3/4. So we're a little bit below what they are saying,
Oh,
but
okay.
we're still within the 20th percentile of our own analysis here. So it's not like we're
Okay.
going super low.
Okay, but you've got that at the very, very low end of your scale, correct? 4.8 is the low end of what you've presented here.
There, I mean, there are cap rates that are lower, but the 20th percentile limit is
Okay.
4.8. So it's on the lower side. I mean, it's on the, it's newer.
Yeah, and when we look at the brokers' reports, as I mentioned, if we look at Q1 2018 versus Q1 2021, would you agree with me that we see compression of no more than 25 basis points by any of the firms? Is that fair?
Yeah, I put more stock in our analysis than what the broker's overall analysis is. I know, for instance, Colliers, when I've looked at their workup, and I've seen some work that's been submitted to us and other appeals by other applicants, what they do is they look at the net operating income in the year following the sale in order to come up with the cap rate. It's not a methodology that I personally agree with, so I don't put as much stock in what the brokers say compared to what we do and what I personally found.
Okay, but the brokers do indeed broker the sales of these assets, correct? So they should have some pretty good handle on the cap rates in the market.
Yeah.
Is that not a fair? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the comparables. Did you use the factor back method again in this for this one?
Yeah, the actuals were considered, and then our findings were run against the comparables.
Okay.
And in my opinion, it's supported and no changes made.
And okay, so let's go through these very quickly. 98 Market, that's right behind the waterfront properties on the East Exchange, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and that rental year, they were 31% vacant at that stage, correct?
I don't have those figures in my brief.
Okay. McDermott again is Porterhouse. We discussed that already. 92 Princess. Can we agree that? Well, I mean, math's pretty simple here. That the number of 2-bedroom units is 50%, 1-bedroom units 50%, no bachelors. That should probably affect the rental rate. Is that fair?
That'd be fair to say. I mean, that's one of the factors. It is overall an older building, but it's
yeah.
The suite mix would pull that rent up.
Did you include this yourself? Did you have a chance to review this? The rental rate, average monthly rent per unit?
For Princess?
Yeah, for 92 Princess.
No, I again, with it, much like I did on the previous one, I looked at in my mind, what was the most similar comparable, and in terms of proximity, developer, standard of interior finishings, I put the majority of the weight of my analysis on 360 and Ross to provide pre-reference data information.
Okay, but you're not considering the rental discounts is my question, because I looked at the appeal, and the average monthly rent is actually 1,323, not 1,576, and that appears to be based on the city not factoring discounts. Is that a fair comment?
I don't have it in my evidence, so I can't confirm or deny what you're saying.
Okay. All right. Well, we can submit that as rebuttal. We can have a look at it. 316 Ross. You say here on page 5 it's the same developer. That's not correct, though.
Sorry, say that again.
You say here best comparable, same developer, but it's not indeed the same developer. Just so we're clear.
Oh, it's not. I thought it was. I guess you could present that.
Okay. So, and then further to that, 316 Ross. That property has 58 indoor underground parking stalls and 58 outdoor stalls. Are you aware of that?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And the suite mix again is similar, but it does have a higher percentage of 2-bedroom units and a lower percentage of bachelor units, correct?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I think those are my questions, Mr. Chair. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right. Diane, questions?
Just in
Renee?
regards to the cap rate. So what would be the change from the 2022 to the 2023? Why the change in cap rate?
Well, market conditions changed, as you know.
Yeah,
The city, rather the province, bumped the reference date in order to capture the effects of COVID-19. Interest rates dropped quite a bit. Price of money became cheaper, so people were bidding more for properties. So we saw a decline in cap rates. And my evidence on page 9, these are just sales that I found. And
right.
The mailers, I come up with the cap rate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, questions?
No questions, thank you.
All right. I have no questions. I understand, Mr. Baracus, you have rebuttal to present, but we will wait for that until after Mr. Story has given his presentation. So, Mr. Story.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so we have established that we're at the corner of Princess and Logan. The physical details and the suite count have not changed. We have 11 bachelor units, 53 one-bedrooms, and 24 two-bedrooms. We have 15 outdoor parking stalls. Again, I visited this property a few days ago, last Friday. So I have visited. I can get a pretty good sense of it. In terms of the rents, we've looked to proxies in the market. And excuse me, based on the reference date here, now we're dealing with April 1 of 2021. We have used new properties. They are indeed suburban. They would represent potentially the higher range. Now, very interestingly, in our discussion on 311, I just want to point out that we've used $225 per foot on the bachelor units. Again, they're small, so they should be on the higher end. The one-bedroom units, we've used $2 per foot. And for the two-bedroom units, we've used $1.75. Now, in researching the assessor's comps, I did notice that in the bag factory lofts on Alexander, they're using, and these are the actual market rents, $1.90 per foot on the one bedroom. That's right in line with what we're using, and $1.69 per foot on the two bedroom. We're using $1.75 and $2. So we're right on the mark. If you do consider, as I think both the assessor and I believe this to be a very good comp. So we have included our chart here along with the support. There's no post-reference material considered when developing our rents. We have used $65 per stall per month. It is outdoor parking. There are only 15 of them. We have estimated that laundry, there should be some income accruing to the owner by way of laundry. That's a very theoretical calculation, but we've used $2 per load at one load per week per bed with 112 beds. So we think that's very fair. A vacancy rate of 3.2% was applied by the city, which we have also applied. Now, and I had mentioned that vacancy in the general downtown areas and the downtown neighborhoods was indeed higher at the reference date, but we have elected to capture the elevated risk in the overall capitalization rate. So we have a wood frame building. It is in a neighborhood that has some challenges. We have a limited amount of outdoor parking, and we do have a vacancy rate that is somewhat elevated. So as I mentioned previously, the brokers are telling us that the capitalization rate compression cycle over cycle is between 0 and 25 basis points. So we've used 5.25 in the previous cycle. We've agreed to it. And in this case, we have used 5.25 yet again. Again, the compression should be no more than 25 basis points. But given our analysis, we believe that a 5.25 cap rate for this property, again, given the location, given wood frame construction, given the smaller suites, given the inferior parking ratio, we think that 5.25 makes sense. So ultimately, our value, and this is evidence on page 10, calculates to $13,109,809, which we then round to $13,110,000. Again, I visited the property. I'm happy to discuss it. And I think I will, since we've sort of covered most of the issues, I think I'll leave my presentation there, and I'm happy to take your questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Barakis?
Let me see here. So just on your page 10, you're using the same cap rate as last go around. Do you feel the market's been flat since then? Period?
I agree that the with the brokers that the from what we understand that the cap rate compression should be somewhere between 0 and 25 basis points. The cap rate, of course, is the numerical representation of risk. I think there are a number of factors here that would be considered for a next prudent purchaser. So I think 5.25 is very fair.
Just in terms of risk, can you clarify what you mean by that?
Sure. Well, in terms of the potential for income to appreciate in this property, the durability of the income stream. Now, do I think that the rents will keep pace with other similar properties outside of this area? That remains to be seen. We know that the parking ratio is negative. We know that, again, we have a vacancy issue, we have a potential rent issue, and then we have this parking issue as well. We also have a wood frame constructed building in again, an area that has some challenges. So typically location should be considered in real estate valuation, to be certain. So I think that there are a number of factors that would give a next prudent purchaser some pause. So we haven't adjusted the cap rate upward. I think we've been quite reasonable in using 5.25 in both cycles. And again, that is supported by the brokers, that there's somewhere between 0 and 25 basis points of compression. We agree with that. So we've agreed to 5.25 in the previous cycle, and we agree to 5.25 now. I would also mention that there's a great deal of new construction in multifamily across the city. And so that should be considered as well. But overall, yes, I feel very confident that 5.25 makes sense for this asset.
All right, fair enough. So I just sent my rebuttal out, but I could do that after your questions, or
Yeah, we'll take questions from the panel first, then you can do your rebuttal. So Michelle, any questions of Mr. Story?
No questions, thank you.
Diane?
I do not.
All right, so Mr. Barakis, then your rebuttal.
So the first one I sent was incorrect. I just sent the actual rebuttal to Nicole.
Okay, so the one labeled rebuttal COW 311 Alexander is the correct?
Pull this up.
Sorry.
The one I just sent, 311 Alexander 2016 mailer entire COW rebuttal. That's the one.
Okay, let me just make sure here, because one is in the general mailbox and one was in mine. So did you just send it to both addresses?
Yeah, I sent it to
Okay, perfect.
Clark, and
Yeah,
then
so
to-
that's the one that I have put in the SharePoint. So that's in the SharePoint now, and I'm just going to email it to Mr. Story as well.
Mhm.
Okay, just to confirm, Mr. Barakis, it's the one page.
No, that's not that one. That was his originally, which I accidentally sent back as
Oh,
mine.
okay.
But then the second email I sent, which is, it should say 311 Alexander 2016 mailer entitled COW rebuttal. I was trying to listen and do it all at the same time. So
Okay,
version-
let me just make sure that I have the right one that I'm distributing, because it doesn't sound like I gave you the right one, right?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the one page one that's in the.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was just his. My apologies, but keep that one open because that's what I'm basically speaking to.
Okay, and let me
So
just,
there's another one you're putting in then?
Yeah, should be another one, it sounds like.
Okay, so the first one was the A and E.
oh, okay, I think there was just a delay on the email because I just got it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, the email is slow around here. Let me just put that into the SharePoint. And then I will send Mr. Story the correct one. Okay, so this one is just a little bit different because it starts off with 311 Alexander, 2016 mailer. So that should be the complete one.
My apologies.
No, it's all good. It's all good. The email is just slow.
so the
It-
second one's
it is.
13 pages.
Yes,
Okay, it's
oh, there it
about
is.
midway. It's about
Yeah.
midway on the,
There it is. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
yeah.
And Mr. Story, it's coming, I promise. It's
No
just a little bit
So
slow.
was spring, but it's not here yet.
Exactly, it's like winter. It sticks around.
And after Wednesday, it may never come.
Yeah, that's right.
You get the email yet, Mr. Story?
Oh, I have something now. Oh, shoot. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. And all of the panel members can see the second document that I put in?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, did you receive that document, Mr. Story?
I did, but it's flagging that I have to go through a process here to get the what's called a safe version, but I should have it in just a moment. Sorry.
it thinks it's spam.
It thinks it's hit the spam. Okay. Oh, and okay, we're good to go. I've got it now. Thanks.
Okay, so then on your rebuttal there, Mr. Bruckus.
okay. So I just, this is again, that 311 Alexander, the bag factory. So it was submitted to us in the applicant's rebuttal that he took the amount of income that they were reporting and averaged the rent out to be $988 per month. And I said, wow, I should look into that. So what I did is I pulled up the mailer we had. So you can see the page 3 that matches what he submitted. So we're working off the same mailer. So if we could all please scroll down to page 7. So what I noticed here was that some of these units, looks like they're rented by Manitoba Housing. Most notably, if you see like on page 8, you see some units assigned where it has a name and it has housing beside it, where it shows the market rent, which how I read it to be what the private person who wants to live in this building pays on the market, and then recurring charges, what they're actually getting charged. So you can see for some of these properties, some of the units rather, there's quite a big discount Looks like these are the units that Manitoba Housing is involved with. So I think that's why when you look at the rebuttal that the applicant presented on face value on a simple look at the income they received divided by the units, there's a discrepancy in regards to the rents that we have in our system. We use the market rents, not the total income inclusive of the massive non-market housing discounts in order to determine what the average monthly rent ought to be, so to speak. So when you look at the last page here on page 13, it's a bit clearer. They have a summary. You can see the occupancy level. Looks like they've got about a 3.5% vacancy rate, and they've got the average market rents given here for the 1 and 2 bedroom, and the average is 118925, which is what we have in ours, and that's the market rent. That's not the Manitoba Housing watered down total income, potential income or income received divided by the units. So I just noticed that quick. I think it's pretty important in regards to the conversation we're having. So that's my rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Story, on the rebuttal?
Yes, I do. And thank you, Mr. Brokus. I don't believe that I've seen this breakdown in this manner, but can we agree if we shouldn't be using this property as a rental comp, then you don't really have any rental comps to support the 2022 sub, correct? This is the last of the, right? That was the last of the, this is the one that you said we should be relying on, but if it's predominantly Manitoba Housing, then we should probably give that limited weight. That's my first question. Is that not true?
No, I don't think so at all.
Okay.
I'm using the market rent as an indicator, and that's what we have in our table.
Okay.
The rebuttal that you used, you included the Manitoba Housing rents.
Okay.
Because I guess you didn't have it or whatever. So
Yeah,
that's why you came up with 988, and then we're much higher.
Okay, but the real interesting piece here from what you've submitted is that they're showing that the average rent per foot, this is page 7, is $1.74 per foot. And for this property at this time, we've suggested between $1.50, $1.75, and $2. So this in fact supports our position, does it not?
I'm not sure where you're seeing that statistic. Can you
Page 7, far right, average per square foot.
on the
192
rebuttal?
on your rebuttal, page 7, final column on the right. Yeah, it says average per square foot for the market rent. What you're suggesting is the market rent, that 1189.25. That's an average of $1.74 per foot. That's precisely in line with what we've suggested.
Sorry, Mr. Story, I don't.
On the rebuttal, page 13.
Yes,
Basically, the last page.
page
of the
13
rebuttal.
or page 7? Sorry, you said page
Oh,
7.
I'm sorry. It says
Yeah.
page 7 on the bottom right, but it's page 13 of the document. My
Oh, okay.
apologies. Yeah, I'm looking at the
Okay.
bottom.
So that, okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's my fault. It's the last page of the document. It's page 13.
Okay.
It says 7 of 7 at the bottom right. But
Yeah, I got it
all-
now.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
So you can see very clearly that we had suggested rents between $1.50 per foot to $2 per foot, and this is indeed showing you that the market rent for the best comparable is $1.74 per foot. So just want to
Again,
point
so
that out.
basically, let me just respond to that. And you're looking at the sizes of the unit. They're similar. And so I think it's strange, and I don't think using per square foot is accurate, because you have it clearly saying 1189 on the square footage, which supports our position. And then you've done a calculation on an average per square foot, which is 174.
Nope, no, this is the owner. This is the property manager has made this calculation.
Yeah, I see that. So I would definitely put more weight as a tenant walking around. I don't go around with my measuring tape, measuring the building and saying on a per square foot basis, which one is a better deal for me. I would look at the property down the street
Well,
and see what I could rent there. And it looks like this definitely supports our position, but that's where we differ, and the panel will have to decide what's the reasonable methodology.
Sure, and just to respond to that very clearly, it is a metric that's used by developers, and it's a metric that's used by the property manager in this case. So I think we'll leave it there, but thank you.
All right, Diane, any questions on the rebuttal?
Yeah, the only thing on this page that Mr. Story is talking about is nowhere does it say how many square foot they're calculating it at, correct? Oh, 60,103. I see it now. Sorry.
Yeah, oh yeah, I just noticed that there.
So is that, I have to go back to your, is that the square footage that you're using? You're using gross area 65,423, but getting the rental rate. So Mr. Story, are you using the 60,000 in your discussion of the $1.75 or the 65,000?
Yeah, it would appear that so one thing we notice when the assessor uses the average size per suite, they take the entire area of the building, which includes all the common areas. If there's a fitness room or something like that, they include that into the average square footage per unit, which is not correct. I would suggest to you that the owner is showing you here, or the owner's property management company is showing you that the average 1 bedroom is 537 square feet. The average 2 bedroom is 744 square feet. And so the average square foot per unit is indeed 683. And that's, I'm guessing that would be a real calculation based on the actual rentable unit, and not simply a calculation of the number of suites divided by the footprint of or the gross leasable area. So again, this is the assessor's evidence. This is not our client, but just looking at this, they're showing units that are on the smaller side, like ours. Yeah, go ahead.
So then if we use the 683 at $1.74, are we not at 1188? 683 square feet, the average at $1.74. Are we not at 1188.42?
Well, they're showing 1189.25, but yeah, there's probably some rounding in there. But
I'm just going the square footage times the $1.74, because you're saying your $1.74 is in line with what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what it's showing. If you look under that market rent, they're showing the average. Now you're pretty much bang on. It's probably a function of rounding, but yes, I
yeah. So correct. You're using an average rent of 1,083, and the city's using 1,173.
Sorry, no, I'm just looking at this. This is for a different property. This is for the comp, right?
But I understand that.
Yeah.
This is the comp.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the $1.74 is close.
Well, so I'm using for our bachelor units, which are 403 square feet, which you can see are smaller than these. I'm using $2 a foot.
But in your calculation thing, you came up with 1,083 as the average for the rent.
Sorry, I'm not following. I'm looking at, hold on, sorry, I've
on
got
your
my
calculation
page 8.
page, wherever the heck that one was.
Yes, so I'm using an average rent of 806 for the 403 square foot units, which is $2 a foot. The average of 497 to 569, we're using $1.75, and then for the 2 bedrooms we're using $1.50. But my point is that the rent per square foot ought to be in line with that $1.74, and that's what the assessor has suggested here. So we think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Michelle, any questions?
Of who now? Who am I asking?
On the rebuttal, on Mr. Barakis's rebuttal.
Right. Okay. So Mr. Burkus, so in your opinion, is 311 Alexander a good comparable for both periods or not?
Yeah, definitely.
So in the first period, when you guys were working your way back and forth through a discussion on the comparables, there was I believe it was comparable number 4 had a Manitoba housing component. And the applicant had asked you if it made sense to utilize that type of comparable. And And you had said, yeah, no, you wouldn't use that based on the, obviously, like the rent dynamics and things like that. So now that we know 311 Alexander has the same rental dynamics with Manitoba Housing, how does it still make it a good comparable?
That's a good question. The difference is with 320 Alexander. The only information that I have right now is found on that page 4, where it just shows the rent. I don't, if that's just straight Manitoba housing, or it has a housing component, I can't say for certain whether that's the Manitoba housing rent or that's just the market rent involved. Whereas in the rebuttal that I submitted, there is a distinction made. So basically what I'm saying in the rebuttal is to ignore the Manitoba housing rents. And you can see that's actually what they did at the bottom of their page here. At the bottom of the rebuttal on page 13 is they give an indication of what their market asking rents were, because it's like a mix. And again, I'm putting my weight on 311 Alexander. If I dug further into 320 Austin, I hope we might have that information. We might just have a one-liner like was presented in the applicant's rebuttal, in which you would take that, divide it by the amount of suites, and you can get a rent that comes out, and you don't know whether that's all housing, part market. Here we can parse out what the market rents are, and that's what we have, the 1189. That's what they're indicating on this mailer here, and I'm giving you the source of that, and the source isn't the Manitoba housing, and I'm showing you that's where the rebuttal on the applicants, and it would seem includes those non-market rents in the calculation. So I feel it's not comparing the same thing, because we don't have the ability with the information right now, 320 Austin, to break those apart, whereas Alexander, we do.
Right, because it's not just Manitoba housing, there's the other rents, and that's they're supporting, in your opinion, the rental value that you've put forward. Okay,
Exactly.
got it. Thank you.
Okay,
No-
are you done, Michelle?
Yeah, no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions. So does either party wish a summation on Princess?
Yeah, I'll do a quick summation. This is we've done both, right? Yeah, we've done both.
Yes, yeah, we've done both. So
Okay, so basically, I mean, we know what they actually calculated, and you're right in saying it is post-reference. And if I just came in here saying this is what the rents are once it was built, which is after the reference date, and it's right, and just listen to me, then you'd be very right in being hesitant and dismissing those comments. Difference is I also brought in a bunch of rent comparables in the area, including photographs, property, stone's throw away, similar level of finish with a broken down rent roll showing market rents. So I believe there is strong evidence. I know the word risk has been thrown around quite a bit. I don't know. I haven't seen anything that really truly quantifies that from the applicant's standpoint. So I would disagree with that. And it comes down to whether you believe that using rent comparables from the suburbs, newer buildings in the suburbs, to estimate the rents for the Exchange District are more accurate than taking the renovated rents in the immediate vicinities. Which one would you say carries more weight? I think that's what, in my opinion, the decision of the panel is, along with CAP, which I believe we have sales support for. So without going on for too long, thank you for listening this morning.
okay, Mr. Story, summation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the obvious, excuse me, the obvious question or the obvious issue that we have here is that the assessor has used post-reference material as the basis for the NOI in both of these supplementaries, and we believe that that's not appropriate. We're all aware, as you mentioned, of the Broadway Square decision. We don't believe that it's appropriate to use post-reference material for the purpose of creating the supplementary assessments. So that's our major issue. In terms of the comparables that have been provided, we can see very clearly that the comps actually support our request today. In terms of the capitalization rate for the second cycle, we have broker reports that are showing us that the cap rates have compressed by 0 to 25 basis points, not 45 basis points, as has been submitted by the assessor. Further to that, in terms of the question of risk, I think anyone developing property in the city of Winnipeg is well aware that Chinatown has been difficult to redevelop. There's a number of, it's been in the news. This has been a decades-long issue where Centre Venture has been involved with trying to redevelop the area. So I think that we've actually been quite fair, if not somewhat optimistic, by applying a cap rate on what I would suggest is the lower end for a property in this area, given some of the physical characteristics. We have a dearth of parking, we have a wood frame building, and we have some locational challenges. So ultimately, based on our standalone study showing you the cap rate compression cycle over cycle is indeed 0 to 25%, we believe that our cap rate is of 5.25% for the 2023 supplementary is well in line. So ultimately, I would ask that you do not regard any information that is post-reference, and that you give weighted consideration to our submission. And I thank you all for your time today.
All right, thank you very much for your capable presentations. We have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned.
Thanks. See you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.